Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the listeners of the Good Anime Palette Podcast. Welcome to episode 76, the long-awaited seasonal premiere for winter 2024. Yes, that's right. It's still cold as shit in Hong Kong, but anime right now is hot as fuck, dude. Like, we're just getting started with January, and the anime scene is heating up. So, Jason here, Will here. How are you doing, Jason?
Do you think it's actually cold?
It's cold. I mean, like, in comparison to, like, anywhere else in the world in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I
Like,
guess.
do you know what the weather is like right now in Singapore? It's like 30 degrees.
Well, yeah, but
it's
to be
30
fair,
degrees.
Singapore only has two seasons, wet and dry.
Well, it's not only 30 degrees. It's been raining nonstop for the last 3 weeks. Like, it's awful over there. I'm sorry for any Singaporean listeners, but yeah, your weather sucks. Anyways, what doesn't suck on the other hand?
But you can stay indoors and listen to us wax lyrical.
Yep. So we'll just do a few little things in terms of like catching up on what's happened in the previous season. We did have a fall 2023 seasonal bet, and unfortunately this time I wasn't able to do a second win. Jason managed to snag it with a score differential of 0.24. So Jason's winning picks of Eminence and Shadow Season 2, Dr. Stone Part 2 for New World, My New Boss is Goofy, Shangri-La Frontier, Ancient Magus' Bride Season 2 Part 2, Musume Pretty Derby Season 3, Deadman Death Play Part 2, Forbidden Deductions, and Tier 1 Empire, rounding up with Our Dating Story, The Experienced You and The Inexperienced Me. Those were the winning picks that Jason had for Fall 2023. How are you feeling that you're 5-1 now, right? Or 6-1?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So, yeah. Unfortunately, because of a bunch of different things that happened over the past past month, you know, like Christmas, New Year's, and other sort of life things that happened for the both of us, we are unfortunately not going to be doing a seasonal bet for winter 2024. But
I think we have all like. Let me double check here. We have in the past actually not done winter as well for 2023.
I think it made sense in terms of like just. You know,
the timing of it all is just hard sometimes.
Christmas parties, New Year's, a bunch of other life events for both Jason and I. So yeah, it's tough. But hey, look, at the very least, we're still going to be doing the anime review for winter 2024. Partial review, because not everything is, you know, fully up and running yet. They're only in their first episode. Some are now in their third episode. But we'll try to give our best observations and roundup of what to check out and what to skip for winter 2024.
So before we get into winter 2024, I think we should do a little bit of kind of a skim, kind of wrap up for fall 2023. What do you say?
As quick as possible, because honestly, like, I think the next episode is probably a better place to be talking about.
Oh yeah, that is very true. Actually,
but we should give a special shout out to the number one anime of all time according to my anime list.
Yeah, Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Will and I were optimistic about the anime adaptation before it aired.
But it's like optimistic to the point where like I thought it'd be like an 8.5 to 8.7. Like that's how good I thought it would be.
Yeah, and like Madhouse with their kind of resurgence as well as the manga pedigree, we're pretty sure it will be good. But number one good, I don't think both of us could have predicted that. I mean, not even FMA Brotherhood. You know, everyone always votes to get FMA Brotherhood back on top.
Yeah, the Mal score gouging squad has not successfully taken down Frieren yet. You never know. Things could happen, but Mal might also have like new safeguards in place to prevent, you know, score manipulation. Who knows?
Who knows?
But at the very least, look, like FMA Brotherhood had a long running at number one. It got toppled a couple times, but always made it back to the top. But at the moment, it still seems that sitting at 9.13, ranked number one, Frieren Beyond Journey's End is, and still is, the number one scored anime on my anime list.
So for our next EP, our next episode, we will be giving you a thorough breakdown of 2023 retrospective. So we will give you all the stats, all the breakdowns and analysis then. But I think that goes done with fall 2023.
Yep. On to winter 2024. At a glance, things are looking pretty good. Like I think, like in terms of the total rankings of scores for the series that have been coming out for this season, we got 8s, a lot of 8s actually. Excuse me, sorry. We have like 6 8s at the moment, which are Dangers in My Heart Season 2, Kingdom Season 5, Solo Leveling, A Sign of Affection, Classroom of the Elite Season 3, and Mashal Season 2.
In that order. You guys can check the scores on my anime list if you want, but that is the order of hierarchy.
Yep.
With all I can say is Dangers in My Heart Season 2 is way higher than literally everyone else.
Yeah, so that's 4 sequels, 2 of which are like well into their 3rd and 5th seasons, that being Classroom of the Elite and Kingdom, respectively. 2 new entrants, which are Solo Leveling and A Sound of Affection, are doing very, very well, but we will be breaking those down as we go through this episode.
Do you... I don't think any of those 6 shows will drop below... I mean, actually, Mashal maybe, but I don't think the other 5 will ever drop below an 8.
Classroom of the Elite, outside of Season 1, and even Season 1 was like a 7.7, 7.8, it held a pretty reasonable sort of like 8.1 to 8.14 over Season 2, and certainly right now Season 3. I think that's the standard it's set itself. I agree in terms of Mashal. Again, it depends on the adaptation process.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if it's a lot of like hype tournament arcs, training arcs, and then you have like a lull in terms of like just the in-betweens.
There is one. Yeah.
That could affect it. But even then, I still don't think it's going to drop as low as how Season 1 went down with 5.75, which is 7.57, which is still a very respectable score.
I do think A1 obviously announcing that they will do a full Mashal anime adaptation, so they're going for the long haul. It's not like a Shield Hero, we will just do 2 seasons and then kind of see how it goes. I think they're going to go all the way, and it looks to be very optimistic the way it goes.
Yeah, I think Mashal is definitely an analysis of the sum of its parts, as opposed to like isolated like recognition of like, oh, Season 1 was like this, Season 2 was like that. I mean, if you're doing a full adaptation, you got to watch everything all together and make a conclusion at that point. But right now, it's doing well, so let's give them props. So let's go into a few things first before we actually start breaking down the main series discussions that we want to do for the Winter 2024 seasonals, which is specifically shows that we will not be covering either in length or at all.
Also, I want to reiterate, we have a bunch of disclaimers so then you don't at us about, oh, what about this show? Why didn't you do that show? They're all on the website. We encourage you to check it out. All right.
We've done like 12, 13 seasonal premieres, seasonal reviews.
Yeah, but I feel like we should just say it anyways.
At that point, it's like
you guys know.
We're doing y'all a service to remind you that we have the rules up there, and also y'all have heard this like 12, 13 times.
We try our best.
You should know the drill by now.
All right. The obvious show that Will and I will not be covering, but probably will talk at least 2 sentences about, is the MVP currently, Dangers in My Heart Season 2.
Yeah.
Personally, I was surprised by the huge jump in score for Season 1, but judging by that, I'm not surprised that Season 2 is scored super high. But we haven't checked it out. Maybe we will.
How far did you read in the manga? Because I only read Volume 1.
I think like at least 2, if not more, but it wasn't impactful enough for me to remember.
Like you, of course, you didn't see in terms of like the difference between Volume 1, Volume 2, whether that would warrant such a massive like upscale and score, right? Like 8.7 is ridiculously high.
I mean, we were both really turned off by the protagonist, and it was reassured to us, at least not only by the internet or whatever, but that, hey,
it's temporary.
It's temporary. There is a change, and I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying we are not. Will and I are not rushing to find out, but maybe it's on the potential things to check out, just like a million other things, to be honest, at this point.
Yep.
Kingdom Season 5 is a very interesting thing compared in the East than the West. Kingdom being the 3 kingdoms.
It's based on the 3 kingdoms, like loosely based, or however much credit they actually take from the series. But Kingdom is massively popular in the East. More so than in the West. Like if we look at Kingdom, the first season, where like usually you have the highest membership across like all its original and like subsequent sequels, 213,000, which only puts it at a popularity of 1,109. The first season was a 7.91. Second one was an 8.32, so it's starting to go up and up and up. 8.81 for season 3. 8.74. 8.74 for season 4, which puts seasons 3 and 4 in the top 50. And currently, with the 5th season, it's running at an 8.58, which is enough to put it in the top 100. So, like, look, I haven't watched. Okay, I watched like a few episodes of season 1. I was kind of put off by the 3D. I think you might have watched maybe like
Zero.
Okay, then nothing at all.
I mean, I know a lot about the Three Kingdoms just through osmosis and playing the video games. What's it called? 三國無雙叫咩啊? In English. You know the button masher. They had a Link spin-off.
Oh my god. Wow. Okay.
Muso something. Anyways, I know a lot. I mean, obviously
Dynasty Warriors.
Dynasty Warriors. Thank you. That's a oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. So one interesting thing to note as well is that since season 3 and up to the current season, Studio Pierrot, which originally did the first 2 seasons, has now been like co-producing the series with Studio Signpost, and that was when you noticed the uptick in terms of not only the quality but also the ranking and the score of the series. So it was like a 0.5 differential between seasons 2 and season 3, and then they've kind of kept it consistent since then. So the only thing we can really say is that if you love Kingdom, you're going to continue loving Kingdom. There's nothing bad to say about it. It's just we have nothing to add because neither of us have watched enough or anything at all to offer anything credible here.
And the other thing that I would like to add is Kingdom has always traditionally, at least within our score seasonal bet, has always been like, oh, guaranteed high 7s.
Minimum like
or
8.5.
Yeah.
Right? Like especially the last 3 seasons.
But I'll be honest, other than maybe one person, I've not heard about Kingdom from literally any person ever.
We've just come across too many forms of, homage to the Three Kingdoms storyline, right? So it's not that we aren't interested in it, it's just
I mean, we love your boy Kong Ming.
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of not really Three Kingdoms, but kind of is. Okay.
It's almost like One Piece syndrome. You start from the beginning and then just, run through it all. But that's like the first season was like notoriously terrible in comparison to the rest. Because even though a 7.9 is amazing, it's much lower than what the subsequent sequels had in terms of their score.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Craftsman of the Elite 3rd season, because that kind of fits that trajectory.
Season 1 was not bad. It was slow because they had to do that whole arc of introducing all the different students within the classroom and
very popular though.
It is incredibly popular. The light novel it's based on is one of the most popular light novels on the My Anime List database. And in terms of its scores at the moment, season 3 is literally like the same as season 2. I think it's like a 0.02 difference.
But I haven't watched a single episode, so I can't comment on season 3.
I finished season 1, but I'm like a third or halfway through season 2. I haven't watched it since it was airing, just because I mean, for the most part, I was doing it for a seasonal premiere of that time. So it's hard to really kick things up. But look, I think in terms of like sequel discussions, unless it's like a massive drop or uprise in score, there's not much else to add other than Classroom Elite be elite. It's still good.
All right. Let's also, in the same breath, talk about Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy Season 2, Yurusei Yatsura High Card Season 2, as well as a Synduality Noir Part 2. All these Season 2s, Will and I just haven't watched a lot, or actually any of the first season. But the scores for some of them, including Yurusei Yatsura and Tsukimichi, seems good.
Yeah, especially like if you think about some of them, like for example, like Banished from the Heroes Party. I now wondered.
I left it because I do want to talk about that bit.
Yeah, that one. Whilst it is a sequel and it's like I haven't really watched much of it. The second season is doing better than season 1.
Way better. I really like season 1, and I am jonesing to watch season 2, but I just wanted to watch other stuff and comment on other stuff, so I haven't got around to it. But I am definitely going to watch Banished, because I'm surprised that it even happened, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Now, along with Urusei Yatsura, which is continuing its revival post 2022, we also have Blue Exorcist, the Shimane Illuminati saga. It's a very long sequel name. I'm still working on season 1. Season 2 came out like 2017, so 6-7 years ago. Look, rejoice, Blue Exorcist fans. Y'all got your Exorcist back, and it's doing well. It's like a mid to high 7s, so good enough for most people.
I am interested in High Card Season 2 in terms of just a more, like a weird curiosity, but it is very low on the list of should I watch it or not based on the score of Season 1 and 2.
It's also, it's really not doing that much better than Season 1. It's still decent. Like, low to mid sevens, but again, like I think we just gave priority to other shows, which one we were either personally interested in or we were just curious about. In that same vein, there were other series that we watched a bit of, but maybe not really got into. Cherry Magic, the quote unquote boy love series,
Ranked super, super high this season. But who knows? Like, I have nothing to comment, nothing against it. Just I literally don't know anything about it.
Me neither.
But
also,
it could be that BL, what was it? Sasaki and Miyano, that kind of BL.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, so it's like BLs are always very highly rated in general, comparatively.
You usually have like a smaller fan base, but also like very diehard fans for those particular series.
And they always seem to pick good properties.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Other series that I didn't have time for, but I'm not sure if Jason did. Dr. Elise, Mr. Villain's Day Off, Sengoku Yoko. No time at all.
Unwanted Undead Adventure.
The one I did watch, and I thought it was okay.
Isn't it exclusive on Netflix or on Netflix? At least in Hong Kong it is.
Yeah. So the reason why I say it's okay is because it in itself is a pretty decent fantasy series. However, as we break down this winter 2024 season, there are a lot of really good fantasy / isekai series to check out. And so it's not to knock on Unwanted Undead Adventurer. It's just it's only okay. But you love your fantasy series, especially if they're more action adventure based. That one's pretty good to watch.
Or like just put it on while you do something. I think Unwanted Undead Adventurer is not, at least from what Will is saying, is not necessarily mid, but it might be mid at least to what this
in
season,
comparison to what
offers,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
I think that we all same thing also about the sequel syndrome of bottom tier character. We don't know anything about it. Seems to be doing okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Villain's Day Off looks to be a bit fluffy, but the score is a bit low, so we just haven't checked it out yet. But let's talk about...
Oh, actually, before that as well, there was one more that was also on the... We're not going to go that much into it, but it's kind of decent. Fluffy Paradise.
Is it fluffy, Will?
It literally is about a girl who dies, gets reincarnated, and all she wants to do is hug fluffy things. And so everything in the series is just fluffy animals, dragons, chairs,
How
sofas.
can dragons be fluffy? They have scales. It's hard. A chair is hard unless if it's,
And I think it goes beyond just loving fluffy things and just having like an
a fluffy time.
And just exactly. Just being fluffy with whatever they so choose to be fluffy with. It's okay. It's not amazing. I do like the plot in terms of like why this character is that into fluffy things in general.
Mm-hmm.
It literally is like what the title says. It's a paradise full of fluffiness.
Speaking of culture and plot, but this time in quotations.
Didn't even say anything about culture at all. We know what you're going.
Oh, the cultural fluffy stuff. Let's. I'm just going to briefly.
There's culture of stuff, and then there's
culture,
right?
Yeah.
So I think this has to be a duo, a tandem. Unless there's one of more focus for you, but I'll let you take.
There is one of more focus, but
I'll let you take the floor.
Every season there is that ecchi show, and there's always those that have uncensored version. I think the Labyrinth Isekai one, or was it Black Hero? There's a couple every season that is just like know what you're getting into.
Harem Labyrinth.
Harem Labyrinth, right? That you know what you're getting into. This time
I thought that was decent, but I also why you're watching it. So
yeah. This time around, we have two. Gushing Over Magical Girls is a GL manga that is really well known, as well as Chain Soldier that is also based on a manga that is really well known. All right.
You watch both.
Yeah, I think Chain Soldier is extremely mid. Chain Soldier is very much like what was that show that you watched? Oh shit, it was like two curs, assassins. A girl in black dress. It's a very popular show. Everyone dies. There's a
I thought for a minute, assassin, black dress. That's literally.
Oh no, there's a woman in
from Spy Family.
There's a woman in blue that is kind of into BDSM stuff with the main character.
Ooh, I do not.
Shit.
I'm just talk about Chain Soldier.
Okay. Anyways, Chain Soldier is basically a lesser version of that anime, but there's an uncensored version, so people are going to watch it, I guess. But the more cultured show is Gushing Over Magical Girls, which is like All I can say is it's about a girl who is into magical girls, but she turns evil, and she has an ability to essentially BDSM kink all the actual magical girls in the world, and it gets really cultured. And there's also an uncensored version. Very guilty pleasure, but you know what you're getting into there. That's it.
And then rounding off on stuff that we're not going to go that deep into, a Bones original.
No, I think we're going to get into it. I just don't think we'll go that into it.
Metallic Rouge. I initially thought that this would be one of those, because I think we both saw the trailer for it, and we were kind of weirded out by some of the, I guess, supposed like robot / like mecha aspects of it.
Real quick,
they explain what those things are, but we're not going to spoil anything about it. Real quick, what?
Metallic Rouge is the Bones anime original. So the same, for people who don't know, it's the same guys who did Carol and Tuesday. The director, the music composer, it's kind of the same staff. So they have done a new sci-fi kind of show.
I don't think it's the same subdivision within Bones that did it, but music director, the director himself, as well as it's Bones, right? It's basically like similar kind of aesthetic sound, but in like a neo-noir cyberpunk kind of format.
All I will say is everything looked pretty until the climactic battle, and then it looked really bad, but everything else is very samey that I can't necessarily say extremely bad things about, but there's nothing exciting to say about it such that it's just kind of there, you know?
Yeah. So Carol and Tuesday was done by Studio A within Bones, and Studio E did Metallic Rouge. But there's enough staff members that cross over between the two that's like you can see where like the kind of inspiration for certain set pieces, character types, music profiles, and all that. It's kind of consistent between the two. I don't hate it per se. I think it's more just it doesn't really offer all that much, because I don't know what kind of genre it's trying to go for. Yes, I understand it's more futuristic, dystopic, kind of like cyberpunk.
And yes, we know it's only one episode that I've watched, at least.
Same here, yeah.
So maybe things can change.
Yeah, but the judgment is still out there. But at the same time, I think the stuff we'll be going over later today, they're a lot more like worth your time.
Akame ga Kill was the show I was thinking about earlier.
That one. You watched it too, I think.
Like one episode. Actually, more than one episode. I don't even remember. That's how bad it is. How mid it is to me. Probably the manga's better, to be fair.
The ending for Akame ga Kill was kind of cool, but I don't think that it was like consistent with the manga. That's near here or there.
All right. Now that we have done with all of the kind of cleanup phase of winter 2024, let's go into the good shit. Oh, actually, wait. There is still one other good shit that I want to mention before we go into the actual new shows, which we are also limiting to a more sizable number, so then we can focus more on each show rather than kind of just go through it like a checklist, because we wanted to add more perspective. Yeah. I just want to say Mashal Season 2, it's out now. It's very good. It ups the ante from Season 1, because now we get into the shonen action stuff. There is obviously an exam arc. So there's obviously, kind of tournament stuff. So actions are very good. And one of the things that I think Mashal Season 2 does a lot better than Season 1 is the mangaka, the art style, he gets better, as the time goes on. If you look at his earlier chapters versus his latest chapters. And I think even though Mashal Season 1 had, like, the most complex art style, like the more developed one, Season 2 just had more pizzazz, more explosions, and more dumb slapstick jokes.
I think it just comes part and parcel with the exam/tournament arc, right? So it's probably correct. Where like the ante's upped at this point.
I mean, it's a typical sequel thing of, you guys know what's it about, you know the characters already, so we don't have to introduce, we don't have to re-summarize everything, or if you want to, just watch the recap episode, that kind of thing. So all I can say is a very good showing for Season 2 for Mashal, and I'm excited, and I'll continue watching it.
Yep. Now, we are officially going into the seasonal breakdown of Winter 2024. So, where better to start than Seventh Time Loop. The villainess enjoys a carefree life married to her worst enemy! Exclamation mark. This is a series that was based on ongoing light novel of the same name by Toka Amurkawa, who did the story, and this is going to be hard to pronounce. Hachipu Sawan, who did the art. It's published in English by Seven Seas Entertainment. The same publisher also publishes the English in manga. It publishes the manga in English. Wrong way around. It premiered on January 7th, and it's co-produced by Hornets, all exclamation marks, and Studio Kai. So I put together a little sort of score breakdown in terms of the source, just purely on the light novel, because I think it's best to do a comparison between the original source and the current anime adaptation. So the source, which is the light novel, currently holds a 7.48, and its raw score ranked 3,088. Very low popularity, unfortunately, but
that's his light novel.
Yeah, I mean, like you either have extremely popular light novels like Classroom the Elite and Monogatari series,
or Sword Art Online,
and
right?
then you have stuff that's is very lesser known. It's probably because it's more well known in Japan, and then therefore that's why it got an anime adaptation. The current anime right now sits at a 7.86, ranked 843, popularity 3,013, with members of 51,447.
So pretty sizable stats. What I will say is I read the manga for 3 volumes. I think is currently out by Seven Seas Entertainment. Before they even announced an anime adaptation, I just read the synopsis and I was like, huh. Which the synopsis is actually, it's not like earth-shattering, but I thought it was rather interesting because it is the typical villainous thing of, oh, I'm about to be disowned by my family because of the engagement annulled by the crown prince. What am I going to do? Oh, shit. I am going to do something, and then I become a merchant, whatever. It's not necessarily spoilers because it's literally in the premise of the show.
Yeah. To give the synopsis a little more depth, Riche Imgard Wertzner, who is the main character of this series.
Yeah, I try because I didn't want to pronounce the name. I'll fuck it up. Yeah.
Basically, has kind of just gone to the doldrums of knowing what it's like to be reborn again and again and again, because she's already done it 7 times. You actually, the first episode, the first the first shot is literally just her announcing herself as reborn in her own mind in the same scene over and over and over again. What's different about this life is that because of the fact that she retains the memories of every single life before, it's almost like a Groundhog Day kind of thing, because she always reincarnates / gets reborn.
A Groundhog Life.
Yeah, she basically gets reborn back on that same specific moment, and every time she realizes what's been going on, she decides to do different things, of course, right? Like Jason said, she decides to become a merchant, she becomes a trader, she becomes
a doctor, and
she
stuff
becomes
like
a
that.
very skilled knights and whatnot. But every single time, war breaks out and she dies
at the hands of one particular very ruthless, cold-blooded prince of this kingdom. And then the newest.
What's his name?
I don't know.
If I say football head,
I don't know. I really don't.
You don't know football head? Hey Arnold.
Oh
yeah.
Okay, that's what you. Because when you say football, I don't know if you mean soccer or you mean football.
I'm gonna try and do things in a more American context today.
I appreciate.
I'm feeling real North American. No, of course not. No.
Well,
but yeah, Arnold Hine is the main adversary / love interest in this series.
And why is that? Because in the newest loop, she essentially, kind of due to a mixture of events and circumstances, is kind of showing off her skills of her previous life to either navigate or go around. I think she was jumping off of a balcony, and it got the glimmer in eyes of this prince, and she is like, well, let's see where this goes, because this prince has been ending everyone's life every loop because war breaks out. I want to figure out why he does it, because if I get killed, I'll just loop again. We don't know if that actually will happen, but at this point, she's going to take it for granted. So,
yep, 7 times lucky. That's essentially it. Hopefully, she'll find ways to be able to break the loop and live the life that she's always been dreaming of, which is whatever the hell she wants.
And she takes the skills from her previous loops into account.
So currently, with 2 episodes out, it's already sitting at a 7.86, which I think is
high.
it's high. Look, I don't think it's necessary. Like you mentioned, it's not necessarily like reinventing the wheel, right? In terms of like reincarnation, sort of like series. But I think it's maybe people are more interested in like the romance aspect of it. They want to just understand more about the mystery behind why she keeps on looping and specifically looping back to the same point whenever she dies and whenever she's reborn. So I would personally give it like a 7.56.
Yeah,
something
I mean,
that.
I actually quite like the manga. I probably would give it an 8 out of 10 in general. But
To be fair, actually, when I said 7.6, the manga itself actually is also 7.6. The manga is slightly higher than the light novel. I think maybe just because of artistic changes or whatnot, or maybe just the fact there's more art to see. Yeah, no, I would say this is a safe show to watch. It's not got anything wrong with it. It's fluid. I think that the duo of Studio Kai and Hornets is doing work.
yeah, let me just put it this way. In the kind of the early minutes of the show, as they set up the premise, is our main Villainess being a knight in one of her loops, and there is like a very, very short kind of sword fight scene. And I thought that sword fight scene was choreographed and done better than Metallic Rouge. That's how
I know you
bad.
had to restate that both off air and on air, but I think it's a fair assessment. Like this is, again, nothing to knock on Metallic Rouge, especially since we've only watched one episode. But the fact that it took only like 1 minute of literally the first minute of Seventh Time Loop to really capture our attention versus Metallic Rouge, I think that says something.
Yeah, and I think the narrative for a lot of isekai shows or looping villainous isekai shows that we'll talk about this season, because there's more than one, is very meta and self-aware. And I think that's kind of like the new evolution or iteration of the subgenre of isekai.
Yeah. So following that, still sticking within that fantasy reincarnation isekai sort of spiel, we're going to be moving into the wrong way to use healing magic, based on the ongoing novel, so this time not light novel, of the same name by Kurakata, who did the story. The light novel and the manga were both published in English by One Piece Books. Now, not One Piece, the anime, One Piece, with Piece being spelled Peace. I just had to make that clear. Premiered on January 6th, produced by not Trigger,
Shine Animation and Studio Ad.
Yeah, so another co-production there. Because the MAL database does not collate scores for novels, they only have light novels, for comas, as well as mangas. We're just going to be using the light novel as a source of comparison when looking at raw scores and rankings and whatnot. So light novel sitting at a 7.21, which is significantly lower than the 7-time loop. But I think that's still fine. Probably relatively unknown as well. The MAL score for the anime, on the other hand, is a 7.61. That puts it at a ranking of 1424.
How many episodes did you watch, Will?
I watched two episodes.
Okay, I only watched one. The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic, I think, is another interesting show this season. I don't think... Oh, I keep dropping my mic. Sorry about that, if you hear it on the... dear listeners. What the hell's happening? Sorry.
Yeah, you're going to have to tighten it up, man. There you go.
Yep. The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic is an interesting show because, first of all, they set the premise up real fast. Everything is kind of set up in stone off the get-go, and all the protagonists, again, it's very self-aware of the situation, such that one of the main characters is just like really, really into it. But is essentially 3 high school students, one of which is our main protagonist that is kind of a nobody, and the other 2 being the student council president and the vice president. I don't have the names and plot synopsis in front of me, so I'm kind of speaking from the dome.
Yep. So you got Rose, you got not Rose, sorry. You got Suzume Inukami, which is the class president, and then her 2 friends that come along. So Ken Usato as well as Kazuki Rusen.
So they get teleported. Oh, they have to vanquish the demon lord, and they are kind of supposed to be hailed as heroes. Okay, we've heard that premise before. One small issue. Our main character, the nobody, kind of got teleported by accident.
He wasn't supposed to be there.
He just kind of jumped in the circle.
Yeah, the way that heroes are summoned within this world is that, once the summoning ritual is done, you start hearing ringing bells, which unfortunately one of the main characters, Ken Osato, does not hear. And when he gets summoned and transported into this new world, he's wondering what the fuck is going on. But hey, look, time is short. The kingdom is about to fall. They need to go to the sorting hat
and
room.
You got to walk on, girl, right?
Yeah, you have to go in there and start actually being sorted into your house. Literally, they bring them into a room where there's a glowing orb, and then they touch it and say, "Oh, whatever color it shows, that's the affinity of magic you have."
Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so then now comes our nobody, and he's like, because he's teleported by accident, his self-confidence is not very high. So then he touches the orb. What happens? Oh, there is a green color. So then he's like, "Oh, cool. What does green color mean? What element is that?" And everyone freaks the fuck out. They were, they were just like,
Don't say a fucking word.
Oh shit, we got it.
Don't tell him. Don't have him. And then all of a sudden,
We got to take him out of the city. They even said to that length, right?
Yep. And then, as they start preparing to get him out, in comes Rose, who is just this big badass leader of it's actually the Linger Kingdom Rescue Team. This is the Linger Kingdom. Very weird name. So she basically catches wind that Usato-san is a green magic wielder and loses her shit and says, "I want him. I want him right fucking now."
And why is that? Because the green color resembles healing. So you might think, kind of like a priest.
Why would that matter? They're a druid, they're a shaman, they're like a fucking cleric. Why would it matter? Like healing magic.
Oh, you're just a support class, right?
Turns out, no. She has other ways of being able to nurture and manifest the power that lies within healing magic. And thus begins the shenanigans of Ken Usato realizing that not only does he have this very unique power, but he's also going to be trained by a intense, crazy, maniacal fellow healing magic user
with maybe a heart of gold, but it's just very
only 2 episodes in. Haven't seen anything like that yet.
So the first episode I thought was extremely funny. I mean, not extremely funny. I thought it was a very good time. It was funny, entertaining.
It played out well, for sure, yeah.
But they never really kind of elaborate, because at the end of episode 1, they're like, "Oh, get ready for the training part." So I actually don't know what happens in episode 2.
Do you want to know what happens in episode 2?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna watch it, but
it's the training arc. That's it.
Is it good? That's all I need to say.
I like it. It's also like nothing like fantastic. It just does what it needs to do well, right? It portrays the characters very, very nicely in terms of like you have a low self-esteem, low confidence character that has no idea and feels they have no right to be there, but is thrown into a situation where all of a sudden he finds out that he has this very, very rare and supposedly powerful magical affinity, and is now being
where everyone
trained.
in the kingdom is like afraid.
Yeah, not even so much like, "Oh my god, we finally got this healing magic. It's amazing." We're like, "Holy fuck. Lock the kingdom down. Get this guy out of here right fucking now."
Because usually in these circumstances, it is like the saint. The saint's magic is omnipotent. It's like, "Oh, you can heal stuff. That's great. You are the saint. You are the savior." Here is like the polar opposite, which is kind of funny. It kind of throws it on its head.
Yeah. So I actually liked this. How is it? I don't know if I like it more than Seventh Time Loop, but it definitely offers a slight more like entertainment just because they have that comical effect with it.
Yeah, I would say Seventh Time Loop is more of a feel-good, wholesome,
and you want to focus on life. And you want to focus on the story.
Yeah.
Whereas, like with Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic is more like you want to see what shenanigans this gang of goofballs get into.
Oh yeah, because we forgot to tell you, Ken goes into a dorm, and his compatriots, his dorm mates, who are also under the tutelage of Rose. Or actually, no. Rose is personally teaching Ken, right?
Yep.
But his cohort, I guess, are all like hilarious. I won't spoil it because I think it's kind of funny, but it's just really a good time.
It's a good show. I would recommend people watching this. I think the stuff we'll be talking about more in depth. These are shows that at varying levels are worthy of recommendation.
Yeah, and I think at the end we might do a quick 2-minute summary on kind of our hierarchy, very rough hierarchy of like shows that you might want to check out and definitely want to check out.
Yeah,
all these
we
shows,
might do like a top 3, top 5, but generally the stuff we're talking about in depth.
like all of these shows from 7th Time Loop onwards is 100% you need to check out probably at some point.
Do you want to introduce the next series? We're still following this sort of, fantasy reincarnation isekai like theme. There's a lot this season. There's a reason why we weren't able to put in Unwanted Undead Adventurer, because whilst it's decent, the stuff we're talking about right now are way better.
So Villainous level 99, I may be the hidden boss, but I'm not the demon lord, is based on the ongoing novel of the same name by Satoru Tanabata, who did the story, and the English light novel is published by J Novel Club. There is an English manga published by One Piece Books. I think 1 or 2 volumes is out because I at least read the first volume. It premiered Jan 9th, and it is produced by Jumondo.
Yep,
I've never heard of them.
They're relatively unknown, but I can take a look and see what else they produced.
So has a MAL score. The anime has a MAL score of 7.41, ranked 2125, and has a light novel source MAL score of 8.11, ranked 7073. All right. What you made an expression?
Yeah, they didn't really do a whole lot of work on their own in terms of like studio work where they were actually responsible for doing stuff.
Oh, are they like a support studio?
One of their more like well-known productions was a hentai that came out back in 2017.
Well, there you go, guys. Now
but they were also a production company that worked alongside Studio Naz for Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, and we saw how bad that one was. 5.64 right now.
Yikes.
Awful. Yep.
Okay. Villainous level 99 again. Similar with Villainous Isekais, follows the same story of our main heroine being the villain.
Yumelia Dolkness.
And hey, tell me, listeners, or Will, if you've heard this before. In her previous life, she plays this otome game that she loves and adores and knows everything about. Then all of a sudden, she is in that otome game, living alongside the main heroine and her love interests that are also her classmates.
Now, the way the game is played out is, as otome games go, the main character, usually female in otome games, basically wanders around the school and befriends, maybe even develops romantic ties with other male characters. But at the very end of the game, once you've explored all storylines, unlocked all secrets, and managed to level up your character, you come across the main big bad, which is this particular Villainess.
No, because it's the Demon Lord. She is the secret 100% completionist
That's
character.
what I mean. Yeah, completing the secrets, level.
Oh,
up and
yeah,
all that.
sorry.
She's
sorry.
the real Villainess of this whole series.
Yep, sorry. And the reason why she is the final boss is because she is so powerful that you have to be max level in the game in order to even quote-unquote conquer that storyline and fully complete the game. But our main heroine is her, and she's like, nah, son, I ain't gonna do that. I ain't gonna die. So,
it's in the same way of like 7th Time Loop. It's like she just wants to break out of the shackles of this weird life that she's supposed to run and just find peace. But unfortunately, things don't work out for our Villainess / heroine here, because it's kind of hard to hide your dark powers when you're in a school and everybody is just some newbie student learning about magic, and you literally are the most powerful entity within the whole fucking game.
And tell me if you've heard this before, people. Even within this episode, there's an orb that detects your level, and then she has to touch it, realizing what's about to happen. And she's level 99. Everyone freaks the fuck out.
Yep. One thing I do want to shout out as well is that the main Villainess is voiced by Veru's Ai. I fucking love her.
She's awesome. Plays this kind of very kudere kind of character. And obviously, she has black hair because she is the evil Villainess. And in the game, anyone with black hair is evil. So she's like, well, shit. I guess I'm all alone now. I just don't want any trouble. And but now she's in the spotlight and she's kind of screwed.
Yeah. So now we've gone through like 3 back-to-back fantasy / reincarnation / isekai series. Whilst I think that, they all merit, some watch time amongst the listeners, where does this one stand in terms of like the 3 we've just mentioned?
I would argue this is the bronze medal of the 3, to be very honest.
Yeah, I think that whilst it's not like a distant third, the other 2 seem to be like
it is not a distant third. I would agree.
Yeah, personally for me, I would go. I think with like the previous 2, right? Like Healing Magic as well as 7-Time Loop. If you want something that's more story rich, then you go with 7-Time Loop. If you want something that's a little more entertaining in terms of like the comedic value, you go with Wrong Way to use Healing Magic.
Yeah, I would say 7-Time Loop and Healing Magic is the first and second place depending on what you want. But I will say something about Villainess level 99 that I kind of give props for is that the first episode, half of it are Villainess heroine. He doesn't even show up. And at first, when I watched it, don't be alarmed when you watch the first episode that, why is the graphics really, like the look, aesthetics look really low res, like even to the point where it's a bit insulting. There is a reason for that. And it was a very smart kind of directorial kind of decision that, at least in the manga, wasn't there.
Yeah. One thing to note as well is among the 3 series we just mentioned as well, since they are like adaptations of like novels / light novels, Villainous level 99, the light novel, whilst it is the lesser known of the 3, is the highest scored one with an 8.11. So there is promise that beyond the first couple episodes, and maybe if they adapt it beyond the first season, this one looks like it could potentially go up in score. At the moment, 7.41 is still very admirable. But I think that with this kind of show, especially when you're trying to model it over a Otome game, it does take time to fester and grow, like the storylines, particularly in terms of like the inner dealings of how to not let everyone know you're a demon lord when clearly you are the most powerful being in this game.
Yeah. And it is interesting to kind of have the spotlight being stolen away from what would be the main protagonist of the Otome game in that world. But what I will say about at least the first episode is the production value is good. That's what I will just say. It's good. It's not great. It won't blow your socks off. It is not as good as Healing Magic or 7-Time Loop, but there isn't anything so far that is so, action-packed or jaw-dropping bad that I would say anything kind of very prominent about. I just think it's fine. What about you, Will? What do you think about the production side of it?
It's decent. As much as it's like we mentioned, right? Jumondo, not a very well-known series, but at the studio, but at the moment, it is its highest score production. So it's moving in the right direction, at least. No
throwing shade at the studio, but the anime is okay.
Like at the very least, we're giving props. It was a decent showing, and I hope that given how the light novel is scored, that over time, this particular series, especially season 1, if it is only going to be 1 season, hopefully it gets better over time.
When are we going to take our break, Will?
We are going to take our break right after this one, because I think we should round off our discussion, because right now we're at like 50 minutes right now.
Because so I would argue, should we talk about Bucchigiri instead?
That's not a bad shout, actually. That one we can go over quickly, because did you watch it?
Yeah, I did.
Yep. So Bucchigiri, anime original created by Hiroko Utsumi and produced by MAPPA, and premiered on January 13th. Currently sits at a raw score of 7.62, ranked 1383. Not even going to talk about the popularity, because whatever about that. Bucchigiri, ? Not to be confused with Bucchigiri,
which I got mixed up with, which I think was that samurai show.
Yeah, Shine On, Bakamatsu, Bad Boys. That one was done by Geno Studio.
It says Bad Boys. That's hilarious because of Bucchigiri. Okay. The premise of Bucchigiri is Bucchigiri. This is going to be a really weird shout out and a really weird reference. Will, almost 20 years ago, have you heard of a Korean movie called Volcano High?
Yes.
Have you heard of 10 Tenki Tensen, I think. Teensan Teenha, which is and kind of an ecchi martial arts
No, but I
manga.
can kind of figure what it's about. Yeah.
But Volcano High was the first thing that came to my mind when I watched Bucchigiri, as well as at first I thought it was Tokyo Revengers, to be very honest.
What, in terms of the animation
and
style?
Then I thought
or
it was Shaman King, and then I thought it wasn't any of those things. So what I will say is this is Studio Mappa we're talking about, but I don't think a lot of people are focusing on the fact that it is getting a lot of fanfare. And I think it is a bit of a shame. Because even though this is produced by Mappa, everything does look very well, like, done. Maybe not JJK level, but hey, this is not necessarily the most hyped property because it's an anime original, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't think it's that often that Mappa do originals.
No, didn't they do that volleyball or that water polo?
Oh, that one sucked. I'm sorry.
But didn't they do? That's Mappa, right?
Yeah, the Remain was the,
right.
That was the one.
So it kind of is like every so often, instead of hype properties, there'll be this weird offshoot of an anime original, and this time is Bucchigiri. But the premise of the show, I don't even know how to explain it, Will.
The synopsis is incredibly short. Arajin Tomishibi gets caught up in battles among powerful individuals after reuniting with his former friend Matakara Asamine. Meanwhile, the shadow of a colossal demon lord appears? Question mark, exclamation mark. That's essentially it. It is a delinquent school filled with crazy motherfuckers that just spend their time beating each other up.
Except there is an angelic girl that our main character sits next to because he freshly transferred back home. And everything was happy-go-lucky and everything was good, right? Until it wasn't.
It's really hard to
I don't know
explain what the series is about because it's not even like a spoiler thing. It's just only one episode's out right now.
Yeah, and the Shaman King reference I think is pretty appropriate.
Yep.
But I don't know where else it's gonna go. There's shades of Tokyo Revengers, as in delinquent gangs beating each other up, like turf wars kind of thing. But it's not Tokyo Revengers, obviously.
And we don't know how extensive this war, these different divisions of like delinquent school kids are, right? It's so far because it's only just focused within the school.
And there seems to be a heavy romantic component, but it's kind of played for laughs, especially towards the end of the first episode.
And there's demons.
Yeah,
because certain people are of a certain lineage of people that can manifest these kinds of weird demonic powers, and some of them are very much like at the forefront. Some of them have more latent abilities.
Now, I want to be very clear about the comparison that I'm about to make, but Ida-ten, it reminds me a little bit of the bombastic energy of Ida-ten. It doesn't have the violence or kind of the OP-ness yet. But do you know what
Ida-ten is like low-key S tier in terms of like just bombasticness.
I understand that, and I'm not necessarily saying...
I'm not saying that this is like a shade at Bucchigiri. I can see where the comparison's coming from.
But, let's I'll try to have some succinct thoughts. I think the show is extremely entertaining as the first episode. I also think the comedic elements of it is actually done in a way that is very well integrated, such that I'm not cringing, even though I probably should have cringed. Like, the main character, I think, is his mom or his sister who owns a Chinese restaurant, and he kind of works after school as kind of the chef. She's just kind of very entertaining in a way that if it wasn't expressed very well by the voice actress, I would be like, oh my God, this is so cringe. Or if it's the romantic interest didn't voice in such a way that is not convincing to me, I would be like, oh my God, this is kind of lame. But actually, everything was done very well.
Yeah. So, in terms of like action, I think that this is
and comedy.
This is a good showing. I would give this one a thumbs up.
I would say definitely 8 out of 10, and probably everyone will.
And that's despite only watching one episode, by the way.
It's like a dark horse candidate. It's literally a dark horse candidate that came out of nowhere that I think people should pay more attention to.
Yeah. Well, given that we still have a little bit of time, there is one series I do kind of want to talk about, but not go that deep into, which is Hokkaido Gals Are Super Adorable.
You've been throwing shade at that series for a while.
It's not so much shade. It's more sort of like guilty pleasure, but I know I hate myself for liking it. It's based on an ongoing manga of the same name by Kai Ikata, who did the story and art, published in English by Jump Plus / Manga Plus, premiered on January 9th, and co-produced by Silverlink and Blade. Now, the manga score is, I wouldn't say atrocious, but 7.07. And the anime is significantly better in comparison to that, but still not amazing. 7.37. What the hell? What the hell is this show about, really?
It is to note that the manga is 524 in popularity, so it's really, really popular. So there's at least that.
That it's extremely, and then I wonder why. Because it focuses on a boy, Tsubasa, who moves to Kitami City in Hokkaido from Tokyo, where he meets a gyaru, right? It's a very specific subculture in terms of fashion and lifestyle, particularly amongst females in Japan. Bumps across her at a bus stop. All of a sudden, weird shit happens because I guess the reputation of gyarus in general are kind of like demeaning. They're cold. They like to bully people and whatnot.
Or like they're the delinquents, but the female variant, so to speak. I am being very reductivist, but in a nutshell, that is kind of the essence. They are heavy on the makeup. They have long nails, and they're
bare-legged,
promiscuous of sorts, right?
And that's kind of the reputation that he instills in himself whenever seeing a gyaru, and that's how he comes across Minami Fuyuki, who is the quote-unquote gyaru of this series. Why is this show, or at least why is this series, including the manga, so popular?
Because if you like Marin Katagawa from My Dress Up Darling, but you couldn't wait for season 2 or whatever, and you needed something in between, Hokkaido Girls Are Super Adorable is for you.
She definitely hits a massive growth spurt in certain areas.
Assets, right, if you will, right?
Yep. So, I think that's basically it. I don't really think we need to go that much more in terms of like the plot, because
there is no plot, but there is plot. If you get what I'm saying.
This is essentially the less, like, I guess, egregious ecchi. It doesn't have the ecchi tag on it.
I actually think it's a little bit more wholesome than I expected, because I didn't read the manga and I heard so many middling things about it, not just from you but from many people.
I mean, when you have centerfolds and 2 pages of just like assets, right? Like it's kind of
like
hard.
A bathing suit model type kind of spread.
You kind of just look past the plot and then you look at the 2 plots, the double quote plots right here.
Well, it's quadruple, right? The front and the back.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the back. She looks kind of like, she looks slim thick.
Okay. Yes, I agree. And there's not only one gyaru, okay?
Yeah, there's a whole slew of them. I guess that's all we'll say, really. It's decent. It's also kind of funny that one of the producers for this series is the television Hokkaido Broadcasting. Like, they really were like, this is like how we're going to sell Hokkaido. It's not the seafood. It's not the skiing.
It's the milk.
It's the milk.
It's the milk.
Yeah, they drink a lot of milk in the series too, actually.
The custard thing that they drink.
It's like a yogurt kind of like...
It's like eggnog, I assume, right?
No, it's more like those kind of like nutritional drinks that you have in the morning.
Oh, it's Yakult.
Yakult, but like more like a yogurt consistency than like, like more liquid.
I can get down with that.
I like it. I mean, like after watching Hokkaido Gals are super adorable, maybe.
I will say 7, probably 7 out of 10. There's nothing horrendous about it. There's nothing crazily wholesome about it. It is on the wholesome side, though, to be fair. I guess one thing I can say is... the girl, at least the main gyaru girl, is very aggressive and more forward with the way that she interacts with Tsubasa, which
she's like extremely friendly.
Yeah. But not in a way that is necessarily perverted, actually.
No, not at all. I think for her, she's like kind of maybe like oblivious. We don't know.
Yeah, it's like the Gap Moe thing of she looks a certain way, but she doesn't act that way, but because the way she looks.
Like, there are moments where like you can see she's trying to remove herself from that specific kind of like typecasting, but then at the same time it's like she also falls back into like, oh, I am a big asset gyaru. So
like, I know what I'm doing, but sometimes I don't. I have no idea. But look, it's fine. Yeah. I think there's nothing I need to add there. Waifu material, I guess, for the season.
Yeah, maybe someone that shows up.
No, the horny waifu. Not talking about the actual good waifus.
The ones that you don't want to introduce your parents, but you will definitely see on the side. So, yeah.
We don't condone anything, by the way, as long as everyone's
consensual. We're not
consensual.
saying anything at all. Up to whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So
Just
that
don't
rounds,
hurt nobody.
Yeah, that rounds up the first half of today's discussion of the Winter 2024 seasonal premieres. We will be going on a break, and then right after that, we'll go into some much heavier, much hotter series. We're not going to hold back on our reviews on the next 5 or 6.
Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the second half of the Good Anime Palette Podcast, episode 76, where we talk about Winter 2024 seasonal review. I am your co-host, Jason. Will's over here. We're ready to get it back into the swing of things. Took a swig of water. I went to the bathroom, and we are ready.
Yep. So we got like 5 more series to go over, and this one might take a little bit long, but you know how the drill goes with these seasonal premieres. They tend to be a little bit longer. We will try to keep it rather streamlined, but hey, look, forgive us if we, go on a diatribe about like certain things about certain series.
Yeah, I think we structured it in such a way that the first couple of shows that we talked about before the break was the shows that should be on your radar, but maybe are not like the centerpiece of that season for whatever reason, good or bad, or our opinion. But let's get into probably the shining stars of the Winter 2024, which I have to admit, as you said earlier, very strong overall.
Yep. In no particular order yet.
Yes, no particular order.
Yep. So we're going to start off the second half with Sasaki and Peeps. It's based on a ongoing light novel of the same name by Bucchigiri, who did the story, and Kantoku, who did the art.
Now, what a name. What a pseudonym, by the way.
Yeah, so the light novel is published in English by Yen Press, which also publishes the English manga. Premiered on Jan 5th, produced by Silver Link. Now, unlike the previous series we mentioned, the source for my anime list regarding Sasaki and Peeps doesn't have a whole lot. In fact, like it has like popularity very, very low, but also like whilst it does have like some people ranking it, it also doesn't actually have an official raw score.
So that usually means it doesn't meet their criteria threshold, so it's an NA.
Yeah,
but
it's in the same way when Ranking of Kings came out, and there was also an NA for the manga source.
But it could change, I think, especially after the anime premieres. It always does.
Yeah, because right now, the raw score for the anime is a 7.70, ranked 1199, popularity 3448. So it's not super popular yet, but it is doing quite well in terms of the seasonal like raw score.
So, Will, are we going to go into plot synopsis of Sasaki and Peeps? Oh, one thing we do want to mention before that: the first episode is a double length.
Yep. So it's 2 episodes back to back. Well, not back to back. It's the length of 2 episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, one long ass episode.
Yep. I guess in a quick kind of summary / breakdown of the plot, it follows the main character Sasaki, who is just some boring corporate salaryman,
but on the older side.
Yeah, he's like in his late 30s, early 40s,
single.
Yeah, just basically like just does not want to add pressure to his life, which is why he's never chasing for like promotions. He does like what he needs to do at work. Not to say he slacks or he overworks. I think he just does what's needed to be able to provide him an unassuming but steady life.
And he's a veteran kind of the industry due to his kind of older age, and everyone looks to him as a senpai. And he's very competent at his job, but everything outside of that is very kind of boring.
Yeah. There is one thing that provides excitement for him, though, and that is pets. He really likes pets. And it's not like he likes any specific type of pet. He's really interested in cats, dogs, and then all of a sudden one day he decides, fuck it. I've been walking by this pet store so many times, I'm going to go in. Holy shit, I'm actually in. Oh my god, there's so many cute animals in here.
Oh no, it costs so much to kind of get this cat or that I kind of want, but I'm more of a dog person. Wait, did you hear something? I think someone says, pick me, pick me, pick me. And then he walks over, I guess, to that aisle and sees a really cute bird. And the bird also has an iris that is star-shaped, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, and specifically the bird is a Java sparrow, which is like a more colored version of like the common sparrow you usually see in Asia.
And then he looked at the price tag, and then he looked back at the sparrow and was like, this is cute as shit. I'm just going to take it home. I mean, buy it and then take it home, which he does. And then when he takes it home, it's like, oh, it's great. Oh, he just says, pick me. Okay. Then all of a sudden starts monologuing. What is going on? What? And then isekai stuff happens?
Yeah.
What? Then psychic stuff happens? What? There's technically also my next door neighbor who is a girl that has yandere vibes.
Very creepy vibes. Again, it's only been 2 episodes. I've only watched the first episode. I didn't get around to watching the second episode.
Yeah, me too, because it was double length. So okay. Well, I don't know how else to explain this, but how is it possible that 1 episode into the season, I think we found our best boy winner?
This is, again...
the sparrow's called Peeps. Just that's why the name of the show. Sorry, go on, Will.
Adventure, comedy, fantasy, isekai. I don't know how many times we've said it today. I don't know how many times we've said it for every seasonal premiere. But this one is probably by far the most ambitious and crazy potential one. I think in terms of, like, not to say that the story is wacky as shit, like,
it is actually kind of wacky, to be fair.
You've never seen anything like it before. But I think what it does really well is that it picks specific areas within the adventure side, the isekai side, the fantasy, as well as the comedy, and it showcases it brilliantly. They have really good characters. They have really good voice acting. They have really good dialogue between characters. Actually, extremely good. I think that that's like one of the key components of why I think the show is very, very good.
Yeah, and the whole kind of OP-ness, if you will, of Sasaki is obviously there's a shade of it that is your typical, this salary man, typical nobody kind of cookie cutter person all of a sudden has capabilities that is so like can do spells and stuff. But really, to be honest, to me, the main skill is what he learns as a salary man when he gets isekai and he's like, oh, this guy's down on his luck, but he has talent. I can see that. I have the eye for it because my job requires that. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna give you a job because I have money and because I do trading from the previous world. Because this is not isekai in the reincarnation aspect. It's the teleportation aspect.
Speaking of which, this is where I wanted to bring up the off-air comment you mentioned, which is like, damn, isekais this season are very self-aware and just like no bullshit. Like this is not one like, okay, look, I think it was 7-time Villainess level 99 where like they literally just brush past like, oh, so I like really like Otoma games. One day I got hit by a truck and now I'm here.
Yeah,
that's it. Whereas like Sasaki and Peeps, it's like they don't even do any of that shit. It's just like, right, teleport. You're there now.
And then he's like, oh, it's like one of those isekai stuff, right? Healing magic, same thing. Once they get isekai'd, one of the main, the female character loses her shit because she's just like, oh, is this like the isekai thing? Oh, this is the isekai thing. Oh, this is the magic orb thing.
We're the chosen heroes, right? Oh. I'm a hero? Oh my god. And then there's like, what the fuck is wrong with this girl?
Yeah, and of course, there's at least in healing magic, going back to that real quick, there is always the honest, play it straight guy that's like, how dare you teleport us without our consent? But the other two characters and our main character Ken, he's just like, dude, stop. Like,
and then also with like 7-time loop, where then it's like the main character like knows she's like looping again, and then like the other character starts like, you have now been like, I'm going to divorce you for whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna annul our engagement. And she's just like, okay, cool,
bye.
And everyone's just like, wait, what?
Aren't you sad? Why aren't you like shocked by this? It's like, and she just walks out.
Oh, she's like, I gotta make do. I mean, times of the essence, and everyone's just like, dude, this is probably the most traumatic event of your entire life, and you just took it in stride, literally, right?
Yeah.
So Sasaki and Peeps, it's such. Let me be very honest, and it is the best boring show I've ever watched.
Of the 4 fantasy / isekai series we've talked about today, I think this one, like, not even doing it intentionally, is the most fast-paced one.
Despite a lot of it being very kind of boring,
Dude,
mechanical.
the guy works at an office just crunching numbers. He likes to look at animal like it looks at cat videos while he's eating like his like convenience store bento, and then all of a sudden he comes across a magical sage that's trapped inside a bird's body, and now he is living his life, but like still also like, oh, I'm really good at doing all this stuff, but I also want to maintain what's happening at home. Except that when he does get home, supernatural shit happens, and he is now struggling to find balance between being this insanely powerful magical user in this new world, but also trying to keep it under wraps in his current world.
But what I love about Sasaki and Peeps is the business talk, the office kind of reading in between the lines. So, for example, there's like a very offhand comment that Sasaki asks, I guess a coworker, because I don't want to spoil it at a certain place, is like, "Oh, this person I'm working with her. What is your take on her, essentially?" And then he's like, "Good luck." And then he's like, "Oh shit."
The whole sort of like very mechanical, dry aspect of like bartering and trading and like merchantry and all that, it gives me like vibes of how Realist rebuilt the kingdom.
Absolutely.
Except that whilst both of them are dry as shit, and I also really like Realist, somehow this comes off as even funnier.
Yeah, and when Sasaki makes a lot of business transactions, and he has that really exaggerated face, which they only show when he's like dealing and smiling, you know what I'm talking?
Yeah.
And it's just like, really, I know what you're doing. It's so dumb, but I really love it and respect you for doing that, Sasaki and Peeps. It's just very interesting to go from that angle, because that's fresh to me, and that is using what we all know and love about isekais and changing it ever so slightly to make it an interesting story. Now, will that momentum be maintained? I have no idea. But this literally wasn't on anyone's radar, I think, for almost everyone. First episode drops. Then no one will shut up about it. And now Will and I are also not shutting up about it. I really think this is the best show that in many ways
It really shouldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it tries so hard to be straight-faced and straightforward, but it also just lets slip. It's like, it's an isekai. It's a comedy. And we want to remind you that you're watching a comedy isekai.
And then there's, like, paranormal stuff in the non-fantasy isekai world. I'll just say that. And it should be, like, this big reveal or this really kind of dramatic thing. And Sasaki and Peeps is just like, "Oh yeah, that's a thing, guys. You know what's up. Let's just deal with it." And I'm just like, "Oh my god, this is fucking dumb, but I love it."
Yeah. So to wrap it up, Sasaki and Peeps, definitely watch this shit. It's a very good series. I mean, at the moment, like at the minimum, I'm giving it an 8, despite it having a 7.7, which I think, it's only going to go up from here.
Yeah, I think it's an 8, 100%.
Yep.
I don't know if it'll ever be a 9, in my opinion, but I want to be proven wrong so badly.
There are so many 8s that I would easily vouch to people. This is one of them where I'm like, if you want an isekai that is not like the standard isekai,
but also is,
yeah, like it very much knows an isekai, and it tries its best not to be an isekai, but it very much is. I know that sounds really weird coming out of my mouth, but like, watch Sasaki and Peeps. That's basically it.
I think if there is only one isekai show that you watch, it is Sasaki and Peeps.
Yeah. So speaking of which, when we said that, in our hearts, Sasaki and Peeps is an 8, but not quite an 8 yet, there is, of course, a series that we're going to be talking about right now that officially is an 8 and up on my anime list. A Sign of Affection, based on the ongoing manga of the same name by Sue Morishita, who did both the story and the art, and it's published in English by Kodansha USA, premiered January 6th, produced by Agiado. Now, we covered this series when we were talking about our ASAP 3, I believe, back in November, or like a few months back, basically.
I think ASAP 4.
Oh, yeah, we've done 4 now. Yeah, anyways. So, yeah, the scores for it, as a reminder for people, 8.47 for the raw score, rank 162, and popularity 422. The anime currently is scored at 8.31, making it ranked 244. Popularity could be higher, but again, I think it's a new show. It takes time for people to start clicking on stuff. That number is going to go up higher and higher. I think that a lot of people are going to start looking into more romance-based shows, particularly with how strong Science Fiction has been doing, and considering how popular it is as a manga as well.
So you know how I feel about the manga. I mean,
we don't even need to talk about that because we went extensively into it. I think the point of contention that we might have, though, is the studio that's doing it, Agiato, of bookworm, Ascendance of a Bookworm fame. So one of the things that we talked about during our ASAP discussion on Science Fiction was how they're going to bring this series to life. Not in terms of like adding color to it or adding motion, but the core aspect of it, which revolves around sign language, being able to communicate with someone who's hard of hearing or even deaf. And that was, I guess, one of the areas that we were cautiously optimistic about, because we made that comparison with what was it? What was the movie called?
A Silent Voice.
Silent Voice, yeah. Where if you don't carry that particular aspect forward and really make it like the focal point of your series, you're doing the overall series a disservice.
Yeah, and not throwing shade at my number one movie of all time, A Silent Voice. The deafness and hard of hearing and sign language is a very integral, but it's not necessarily the main focal point. It's more about bullying, character interactions, guilt, and associations with those things,
along with like some romantic subtext in it as well.
Yeah, and it's very emotional, whereas A Sign of Affection is more of the fluffy love romance and really figuring out what the world is through the lens and the ears, in some ways, of this girl.
Yeah. So let's get one thing plain and obvious out in the open right now. A Sign of Affection is
very pretty,
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's fucking gorgeous. And you wouldn't have expected it from Agiato. Yes, Ascendance of Bookworm does look very like fluid and very, very like vibrant. But there's something about the choice of colors, and not just like, oh, pink everything this, green everything that. It's more like they know how to use like pastel colors. They know how to use like matted colors to be able to show like dissonance between different characters, how to create like you actually get to see emotions through color.
And speaking of, emotions and colors and art style, the comedic aspect of the manga is actually comes off extremely well portrayed in the anime. Is it, laugh out loud funny? No. Is it meant to be that way? No. But it's just very cutesy, like, okay, kind of thing that if, when you transition between kind of more realistic art style versus like a chibi art style, there is that jarring effect, but I didn't get that, at least from me, for A Sign of Affection. What about you?
I thought it was okay. There is one thing I do want to mention, though, which is in the manga, they covered like how the main character, I keep forgetting her name, Yuki. Yuki, that's right, because it's snowing.
Yeah.
Snowing, yeah. For her, in the manga, she's hard of hearing / deaf, and she has a hearing device, a hearing aid that helps her not necessarily to hear voices, but to hear sounds. And so sometimes you can kind of hear like voices creaking through her hearing aid. In the
like muffled, yeah.
In the anime, on the other hand, they kind of like gloss over that.
Yeah.
And rather than doing the hearing of muffled voices, it's just she can barely hear anything. She can hear sounds, but she can't hear voices, which you might think is a bit of a cop-out, but I think it was also a no-brainer / realistic choice that the production studio had to go through, because it would be a nightmare to do sound design for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. For context, in the manga, when Yuki has to either lip read or try to use her ears, which are heavily limited, if not she's fully deaf without the hearing aid, and in the manga panels, the words are not only grayed out, but they're kind of jumbled up. But
kind of creaking through, yeah.
Yeah, and you can still read what is being, shown on the panel, but to convey the lip reading or, it's not quite right element, it was done very well in the manga, and we were worried about how that would transition on screen. So
I think basically both sides of the manga and the anime were very aware of the limitations of the medium that they were adapting or creating for. So I think they made the best out of that situation. So no shade whatsoever. I think that they did the best they could, and it works just fine for me.
And the things they kept in the anime, though, of like, talking about tapping on someone's shoulder versus like not grabbing them from behind, or kind of educate people a bit on hard of hearing or deafness, is more so than edutainment kind of shows. So at least I can give them a little bit of props that they at least conveyed it in such a way that I think is not only respectable, but at least knowledgeable for sure.
There is only one point of criticism I have for this series.
Let's hear it.
I don't like the way that Nagi, the main male character, looks in the anime. I think his lips are a bit too plump. I think that the facial structures are a bit kind of like irregular. I know it's weird saying that considering it's an anime.
No,
but
because I completely agree.
It looked a bit jarring, They made him look as foreign as possible.
Yeah, and okay, so in the manga, he's drawn like kind of his jawline was very chiseled. He looks like he is a large dude both in the anime and the manga, but in the manga he is drawn in such a way that is kind of like this giant that you kind of can't figure out what they're feeling or thinking, and that feeling of thinking not knowing thing is in the anime. But the aesthetics part of it is a very odd choice.
In the anime, they make Nagi either make Nagi look incredibly massive or Yuki incredibly small, and like
I can't decide which one, to be honest.
It's not like a massive sort of criticism. It's more of a nitpick. But hey, look.
When one of the two main characters are portrayed in such a way that is a bit jarring, especially when you see it from the manga, it's going to stand out. I mean, literally, he stands out, right?
Let's just make it an imaginary award right now. Head pat of the season.
Yo.
Absolutely, right?
Head pat of the season.
I can't say anything else,
but not the meme head pat, as in like
the
wholesome head pat and the literal head pat.
Straight up head pat of a series. I love it. It's really good. And I don't really say that a lot about like shoujo series. I don't really watch a whole lot of them.
You were, I wouldn't say not receptive to a sign of affection when we talked about for ASAP, but you were kind of a bit unsure because you were like, oh, the shoujo element is a thing that I'm not are not familiar with.
Like I get romance, but it's also like more romance from like a male perspective, or at least like from my perspective, which is something that's not very much educated in shoujo.
Right.
Because there's a lot of depth in terms of like how romance is portrayed in the medium.
As someone who reads a lot of shoujo stuff, there's a lot of trash out there. Let me just be very clear. What do you think of the monologue of Yuki?
Very rich, very deep. I like it a lot. I think at times it does drag on a bit, but you kind of need that, right? Like, because the story itself in the manga is very much rich within like the inner thoughts of Yuki in terms of like how she lives as a deaf person, how she's able to reciprocate emotions to people, and when she does receive emotions from that counterpart, how she internalizes it. So there's going to be a lot of internal monologue. It does come off a bit slow, but like that's part of the genre. You can't knock it on that.
I will tell you something. The show is, and I no pun intended, is extremely good in opportunities where it chooses to be quiet. And sometimes the still frames are wallpaper quality. Like, especially in the beginning, in the subway, there's a subway scene, very typical kind of opening. It's fucking gorgeous, dude. I was like, Ajiato, I don't know what you did, but if this is the way forward, fucking let's go.
The chibi versions of the characters are also
very
adorable.
Cute.
And like this might be like a spoiler, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Like you'll get it. I'm gonna be as obscure about it. But clapping, I like the clapping a lot. When they're in the cafe bar.
Oh, right.
That part was like, okay, they done it once, they did it twice. Okay, it's still cute every single time.
because
it's still cute every single time.
If I were to describe that scene, it's like, oh, it's just a comedy gag, right? Like, it's kind of overdone, right? But then when you
like, not to be like punny and everything, it's affectionate as fuck. This is a very, very good adaptation so far. It is slightly lower than its source score, but I don't think that's an issue. I think it's just
I think over time it's going to jump up. I think especially after a very, maybe not maybe episode 3 or 4, something is going to happen because it happens really early on. I'll just say that.
Y'all have to remember, right? The series we're talking about today, especially since this is a seasonal premiere, every one of these series either only has 1, 2, or even 3 episodes out. So it's going to be hard to give a conclusive score or review of it. But what we've seen so far
Not even... sorry, go on.
What we've seen so far of A Sign of Affection, very good.
Not even jumping ahead just slightly. Not even Delicious in Dungeon being by Netflix is like binged, done in one go, is week by week. So things can change, similar to how when seasons wrap up, the score shifts is massive, which we'll get into for our retrospective. But I think Sign of Affection, for me personally, the manga was a 9 out of 10, almost 9.5. The anime already is going to be a 9 out of 10. And it might even be higher just because of the portrayal, the motions, and the emotions and the aesthetics of it. I think everything is top-notch, and rarely do we get a shoujo series that not only tackles death issues, but also is just really good. That's how I feel.
We now go into...
What about you?
Yeah, I think like this is... It's good. It's just plain and simple. Like, it's not even so much if you love romance or not. It's just straight up, you have to watch it just to admire the beauty that is A Sign of Affection in color and motion with audio.
So going from the most wholesome show of the season probably to now the most darkest fucked up thing. Also an ASAP candidate at that time that we talked about it. The Witch and the Beast, based on the ongoing manga of the same name by Kosuke Satake, who did the story and the art, published in English by Kodansha USA, premiered Jan 12th, produced by Yokohama Animation Lab. The source mal score for the manga, 8.15, so high rank of 474. Anime, 7.392231 rank. The 3-sentence description of The Witch and the Beast, if you haven't watched our ASAP, you should really not watch it, listen to it, because we go in depth. But it's essentially, what if witches exist in the real world, so to speak, and what if everything is really fucked up and not magic in the happy-go-lucky sense like Little Witch Academia, but magic in the
Overlord?
No, probably even darker, because Overlord
is... Yeah, at least there's some humanity in Overlord.
Yeah.
Despite them literally being a fucking, like, undead
lich.
Yeah, they're a lich, yeah.
Okay. Well,
so, I don't know where you're going to go with this in terms of your review so far of Witch and the Beast. Granted, again, only 1 episode has been out. So, really hard to judge how the rest of the season is going to go.
And I have read probably like 5-6 volumes of the manga, and I think you read 1,
Just
right?
the 1, yeah.
So, let me give you my take, because I think your take... Well, what do you want to do first?
Like, let's hear what you have to say about Witch and the Beast, because you are, the veteran here in terms of like having read more of the series than I have. But we've also watched the same amounts of anime because there's only been 1 episode out. But just maybe collect your thoughts and sort of give like a quick breakdown of what you felt whilst watching the animated version of The Witch and the Beast.
There are times in The Witch and the Beast that I think that looks extremely bad.
Okay.
And animated extremely bad.
I will chime in on that too, because I was severely disappointed about 30 to 40% of the way in terms of how the show looks. One thing to get out of the way, because it's the easiest criticism we can make, stop fucking doing 3D for everything. You don't need to use 3D to show crazy animation.
Maybe it's a budget constraint. Who knows, right?
Maybe, but at the same time, it's just like, it just looked tacky. You know which specific scene I'm talking about.
I know, and also, like, if you like Star Wars, pew pew, right? Like, come on, right? Like, it takes... I think Will knows what I'm saying. I'm being somewhat cryptic. You watch the first episode, you'll know what I'm talking about with Star Wars pew 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 sound effects. And the look too, by the way.
It breaks the immersion.
It does. Especially the pew pew part is in a very monumental scene in the first episode and in the first volume of the manga.
The thing that I loved about reading the manga, and granted, it's easy to say this because the manga is in black and white, but it's like it was very easy to see which scenes were dark and contrasting against the light. Whereas with this, it's like that pew pew scene was so jarring when the fight was taking place.
That was not even like the moment I was like, this is not good. Very early on, there is a fight scene that a witch does, and there was the resolution of that, and I was just like,
I hated that so much
because like the first couple of minutes, at the train station, I was like, okay, I mean, it's not gonna like wow my socks off because there's nothing really to talk about, right? Okay, it's kind of okay, all right. And then I watched that scene, I'm just like, oh god, because we don't get a lot of these grim. Because actually,
I just refreshed the Mal page for Witch and the Beast. It dropped by 0.01. So
okay.
It's now 7.38. So it's dropping as we speak.
And I think it's really sad and unfortunate because the manga, first of all, I think I generally don't like to be all superior in terms of which medium to consume. I mean, we literally had a BP that was released to talk about that. But the manga is so much better drawn, obviously because it's not in motion, right? But it's drawn and conveyed even with the art style in such a way that it feels very like storybook, grim fairy tale that the anime has none of.
Now, when we talk about how, like, hey, look, it's just the first episode, there's bound to be more episodes coming up that could change the score. But I think when you mention in terms of, like, the animation style, the direction in which they choose to reveal certain powers, that's already set in stone when they were doing storyboarding from, like, months ago. So that's not going to change.
And also, you read the first manga volume, so you would know right after this, they go to a city and let's say a police force is involved, right? There are scenes in there that are very action-oriented, that are, like, massive in the scale of things. And I have no confidence after the first episode that the visual is going to improve.
Now, to give it some props, it does retain some of the dark, desolate emotion that comes from the manga.
It does. And a lot of the coloring is very interesting, especially there is like a gate in the mansion that is kind of midway through the first episode that is drawn in such a way that I think is pretty aesthetically pleasing. I think towards the end, the resolution of things, there's like a zeppelin that is drawn pretty well, but every time I look at the animation, like when it's in motion, there are parts of it that I'm just like, kind of not good, kind of worrying. And it really is unfortunate because I really like the manga.
So
it's still 7 out of 10.
Back on like the Yokohama Animation Lab spiel, the last show they had that was a seasonal was The Kingdom of Ruin. And there was a point that you mentioned off air that it was one of the shows that was promising in the beginning, but it was a landslide in terms of its score. I think it was like a 7.18 before.
The Kingdom of Ruin? Right here.
7.58.
So
it's not 7. Okay, it's not 6.38 anymore. I mean, at the time it was 6.38. It's now 6.30.
Right.
That's how bad it slid. It slid a whole point and a half, basically. And I don't think it's going to be like that bad for Witch and the Beast. I think that the story itself is strong enough to keep it at a 7. The problem that I think both Jason and I have is the direction of art style and animation is not, it doesn't instill confidence in me that it's going to improve.
Especially, I think, because I read on, there is going to, and I can assume based on the number of volumes, like where they're going to end, and that scene is all fighting, and I'm so worried because it's going to be 3D, and the thing is, I don't like to throw shade at the studio when they make a decision to do 3D like they did for the first episode of The Witch and the Beast, because I understand, at least like rationally, the constraints people have, the budgetary issues. It's a constant problem in the industry.
Well, in that same vein, it's also like unfair to critique the 3D because we've always been like hard critics of badly done 3D, but like you can't ignore that it is literally one of the main visual elements of The Witch and the Beast.
I literally laughed at one point in the very climactic first, like the climactic action scene of the first episode, where shit is actually really fucked up. Like, it's genuinely like messed up, the situation that the characters were in, and it just takes me out of it. And that is almost the worst thing that can happen to something that is so grim and dark and like
immersive as well.
And human beings are scum. But then I'm laughing at how like corny the effects are.
It is probably the most disappointing
Severely.
series, but it's also not the worst thing we've seen.
Yes. I just think I had high hopes based on the manga, and I think you had pretty high hopes as well. Or
It went from being like this could have been amazing to it's
yeah,
it's just okay.
It's not mid, but it's middling, I will say.
It's teetering on the precipice of dropping into that mid tier, unfortunately.
Yes, it is. It's on the edge of it.
Yeah. Let's brighten things up a bit then. Let's go into our penultimate review of this episode. We're going to be talking about Delicious in Dungeon Meshi, based on a completed manga as of, I think, September. No, it was completed. Dungeon Meshi's finished.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Holy
Dungeon Meshi
shit.
actually is finished.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, just to confirm when it finished September 15th, 2023.
How many volumes?
14.
Oh, wow. That's actually pretty short.
Yeah. I suppose. I mean, like, you would maybe expected it to get to like 20 or so, but no, it finished roughly about 4 or 5 months ago. So, yep. It is in English, published by Yen Press. The anime premiered on January 4th, and again, we're going to talk about this again. Produced by Trigger. Now,
Like, actually produced by Trigger.
Yeah. So the MAL score for the original source is an 8.49, ranked 147, extremely popular, 256. In contrast, the anime right now is sitting at a 7.71, which only puts it at 1167 for its ranking. Popularity is still good, over 110,000 members, which puts its popularity up to about just over the 1900 mark.
One thing we want to say is Netflix is exclusively licensing or producing this show, and there's going to be 2 cours, 24 episodes of this. So it's a double cour long-running show.
Yeah. Now, this is, again, another one of those series that we don't really need to talk about the plot synopsis, because if you do want to hear about it, just listen to that relevant ASAP episode that we did several months ago. Now let's just
episode 53.
Yeah.
ASAP 2.
Now let's get one thing straight. Neither of us expected Trigger at all to be producing the series.
Correct.
But they've done it anyway. And the other blatantly obvious thing is that the score differentials between the source and the current anime adaptation is vast. Now, despite it still sitting at a 7.71, which is very, very good, it pales in comparison when we're talking about the manga.
Yeah.
So I think at the moment there are 2 episodes out. Yeah, on Netflix there's only 2 episodes out. The 3rd episode should be dropping fairly soon.
They're doing a week-by-week drip as opposed to a binge thing, which I mentioned earlier.
Oh, actually, as of recording, it should be dropping today.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. By the time this episode comes out, episode 3 should come out. Maybe they'll change the score. But it's not a similar situation to the Witch and the Beast kind of thing, because
it's not, but it is, kind of. I don't know if I'm guessing we both have similar sentiments about Delicious in Dungeon.
Similar, but I think that there might be some things I'm a bit more positive on in terms of the presentation of the adaptation.
One thing I will say, and I think even you will agree, that the initial impression of Delicious in Dungeon is influenced positively or negatively, I would argue negatively, by the pedigree of the manga. Because no one will shut up about it, including us when we read it. And it was one of those things like Fieren, to a certain extent, of this manga that everyone wants an anime adaptation. Everyone says it's a really good manga, and Will and I are also in that camp. So when they announced it, 24 episodes, when they announced it, Studio Trigger, when they announced it with Netflix backing, we were all very, very excited. When we saw the trailer, Will and I just like fangirled the fuck out. What was it Bump of Chicken being the OP? Fucking dope.
I thought the music was very good.
I think the music is extremely good, and I think the issue is the low score probably would be remedied as 24 episodes is finished.
I think that's basically why I think the score is so low. And again, 7.71 is a very good score. We're just comparing it to a monolith that is 8.49 for the manga source. So I think when you're adapting over the course of 24 episodes, a double cur, it does mean that, I guess, for the series and for the studio itself, they are licensing themselves enough time to flesh out the story. They're not cutting many corners. I think that in terms of like an adaptation, it's as faithful as can be. Like whatever you saw in the manga, for the most part, you also see in the anime.
And the animation is done not only very competently, in my opinion, but actually done very well. But it's not like, 60 frames per second JJK, but it's still really good.
They got great voice actors and actresses. They've got a very competent studio in Trigger animating and adding life to this manga. I actually think that 7.71 is a very low score for what it should be.
Extremely low score for what it should be, in my opinion, as well.
But I think where the difference is in terms of the score disparity for Dungeon Meshi, Dungeon, and Witch and the Beast is that Witch and the Beast, the animation quality is what failed it and is now like getting its middling score. Whereas with Dungeon, I think it's just slow.
Yeah, I think the problem with The Witch and the Beast is when you're so immersion breaking that I laugh at a scene that should not have any comedic thing whatsoever, rather the polar opposite. That's really like a bad sign from my perspective of how I feel about the show. But with Delicious in Dungeon, I can see, even with only 2 episodes, the layers that it's going to be built upon it and upon it and upon it. Obviously, the dungeon, they go down rather than up. But my point is the trajectory, I guess. Was it the prognosis, right? I can very, very confidently say 7.71 will not be the final score of Delicious in Dungeon when all 24 episodes are over. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but I don't want to. And I don't even think it will even get lower than this. It might get lower a little bit due to changes, but then in the grand scheme of things, right?
You never know how slow the subsequent episodes are going to be, right? So I think don't be too discouraged by how vast the score difference is between the manga and the current anime adaptation, because I think that over time, once you start fleshing out the story and when you watch it in completion and take in the whole series, depending on how much of it they actually adapt, I hope that they do a full adaptation. It would be worthy of one, I think. I do not think
14 volumes though would need at least 40 episodes, right?
I would
4
say
curs.
Yeah, so they could
48.
They could do a double cur for the second season. I think that it's entirely possible. I mean, like with the way that Netflix is, licensing series now, I think that they're definitely going to try and push for a full completion of the series. Again, they might need to condense a few things. They might need to speed things up,
or it might take a couple of years. Who knows? But I think when Netflix is willing to do 24 episodes of a show, when a lot of shows only get 8 to 10 episodes, at least from Netflix's perspective, I think it says a lot about their expectations of it and their willingness to do the long game, right?
Yeah. So I'm not worried about Delicious in Dungeon at all. I think that this is actually one of the more promising series, and that 7.71 is probably the lowest it should be. It will definitely be like, I'm not trying to give any assurances here, but my personal gut feeling is that it would be above an 8 by season's end, or at least by the time the series is done with its double cur.
I would be really sad if it isn't.
Yeah. Now, we're currently running at around 1 hour and 45 minutes. We're probably not going to be trying to keep this under 2 hours because, we could actually. It depends on how quickly we talk about the final showing of today's episode.
The last one on the list.
Solo leveling is, this is the one. the one show that everybody is super, super excited about.
I mean, there a bit of inside baseball for you dear listeners about Will and I in Hong Kong. There was actually an advanced screening of Solo Leveling in theaters in Hong Kong at one point, and we were considering going, but we just couldn't make it due to time commitments. But that's how massive and hype we are talking about here about Solo Leveling.
Yep. So just to go over some more, cleanup stuff for the series. It's based on the completed manga of the same name by Chugong, who did the story, and the art was done by Jun Sung Rak and Disciples. It's published in English by Tappytoon as well as Yen Press. Premiered back on January 7th and produced by A1 Pictures. Now, we don't really need to go over the scores again because, look, it's amazing. But
oh yeah, Sawano did the music. There's that too.
A1, right? They have that.
They have the sauce.
Yeah. It's like 86. Anyways,
yeah.
So I'm not going to go over like the score itself because it's already insanely high, well over like in the high 8s. But the things that we need to make sure that everyone remembers is that for the source, the manhwa, whilst it's ranked 60th overall, for manhwa specifically, it's ranked number 1. Popularity across all manga, manhwa, and Chinese manhwa as well, it's ranked 7th. But for Korean manhwa, it is number 1. We are talking about the undisputed, most popular, best reviewed manhwa series of all time on my anime list. Where does it sit right now on my anime list for the anime adaptation? Raw score of 8.49, ranked 135, popularity 655 with membership of 351,704.
That's an insane amount of members. Usually anything around over 100K is already hype, but for 351K is fucking insane. Another thing is Solo Leveling is the number 1 winter 2024 seasonal that is not a sequel.
It's also the most popular in terms of like its membership across all seasonals right now for winter 2024 as well. In fact, it's like it eclipses second place, which is Classroom D Elite Season 3.
So let me first mention something that I thought was very interesting from the get-go. I could have easily seen it when I checked up the Mal page, but when I watched it, it kind of really sunk in. There was a slight controversy about Japanese and Korean names that is portrayed in the manga or the webtoon. Or no,
that controversy.
The manhwa, sorry.
The controversy lasted quite a while.
And I think it's a pretty big deal, especially very far later. There is a very pivotal decision that is actually very messed up. But let's just say that if you want to check that controversy out, you can Google it. We're not going to talk about it because that's way far ahead and heavy spoilers. But I was pleasantly surprised that they went with the Korean iteration and not the Japanese one.
Yep, me too.
Because it says a lot, actually.
I think that in the end, like they pay respects to the original creator, to where it originally came from. It would be a bit of a slap in the face if they were to be like, "Nah, we're going to Japanify it."
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't say that about, for example, God of High School that also have a ton of Korean names and is also a webtoon because, listen, there is an actual Japanese version that is converted to a certain extent. So I'll just say that. I'm pleasantly surprised and respect for going the way that they did.
Now, in terms of like the aesthetic and the animation quality, I am of two thoughts here.
Mm-hmm. How many episodes did you watch?
Well, I'll watch 2 episodes that are out right now.
Okay, so basically, when shit starts to get real for the main character, right?
Yeah. So, on one hand, this is the goriest show that's on air right now for winter 2024. There is a whole lot of blood spillage, a lot of whole body decapitation, a lot of death,
and like really awkward slicing of people.
And they don't just show it once. They make sure it's like, oh no, we slice this person in half, just like they did in the manhwa.
Oh, you don't like being burned? Well, what if we showed a charred person?
Or a foot. Or a hand. Oh, you didn't want to see that? Too bad. We're going to show
Tough
it to you again.
shit.
You
Yeah.
know? So it definitely like keeps the ante way fucking up when talking about the level of violence and gore that was seen, and that's why it's so popular from the manhwa.
Hey, violence and action sells. That's just a fact.
Yeah, like you cannot deny that A1 like basically perfected that. And it's not to say that A1 like you're not known for it, but this is also the same studio that did Anohana like fucking like 12 years ago.
Right. I just think that when you choose not to hide or censor the violence and gore that is very prominent in the manhwa or the manga iteration of the manhwa.
And bearing in mind that a lot of studios do censor it, whether they
Even
blur things
JoJo
out.
does.
Yeah.
Let me just put it that way. Of course, you get like Parasite the Maxim that clearly shows it in stride, right? But I think it's a very conscious thing. And it is really goosebumps. Like, what do you call it? Like, it gives me the creeps when some stuff happens, even me knowing it will happen. That I just think is extremely well done. Well, but also Sawano, I would argue his music is not only very good, but it's actually very different than what I would expect Sawano to do. It's slightly not operatic, but more has that dramatic tone to it that is still what Sawano's known for. So that's good too.
Now, the one thing that I was on the opposite side of the spectrum with this iteration of Solo Leveling was, whilst the gore and violence and the fighting were amazing, the in-between animation for characters was lacking. And judging from your reaction right now, Jason, I think that you're of the same camp.
I know it's two different animes, but when I think A Sign of Affection's animation and color choices is phenomenal, and I look at Solo Leveling, and then I look at The Witch and the Beast, and then I think about how much backing, hype, resources A1 has, I don't think Solo Leveling's a bad show. I just don't think it is the best show.
I think, like, if we think about it, right, in terms of, like, animation, this should not be a problem for A1. I mean, dude, as much as, like, Engaged Kiss is very low ranked, it was very fluid.
Mashal is fluid. I'll just put that. Mashal has better animation fluidity.
There were some criticisms we had about the animation adaptation before as well with season 1. They kind of, like, ironed it out later on, though, especially, like, now that you mentioned that season 2 is going to be more impact heavy, so, of course, they had to up the ante. But, again, they also did the Chorus Recoil, right? They've done 86. SAO for the ones who love or hate it. So they are not stranger to doing fluid animation. I just found that it was lacking in Solo Leveling, which is weird to say because when you're talking about
this is Sword Art Online Studio A1 Pictures that despite all our I'm like losing my mind about this, that like Will and I are very mid about Sword Art Online, but I think one thing that will think that is also like undisputed is that when they want to show how they animate and how fluid some of the action scenes are, if they choose to, it is fucking undisputedly gorgeous, and it is so action packed when they choose to, you know, put the money where their mouth is, right? Solo Leveling, I would argue, doesn't have that a lot.
They put a lot of attention and time into those violent scenes, those action scenes, and that's like a no-brainer. Absolutely, it makes sense to do that. But when you have like characters moving from one side of the screen to the other, when you do like the movements of facial expressions when they're talking, I can't help but feel they cut corners.
Yeah, I honestly think so. And but to be very clear, one thing that I thought was done so well was the very end of episode 2, which was probably the most important scene, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the monologue that the main character does, the build-up, the swelling of music and aesthetics, legitimately, it is fan-fucking-tastic. Then within that scene, I see that, let's say, statues move, and they just bob up and down. And I try my best not to think about that, but when I do, I just like feel like it's a bit unfortunate.
Now, after watching the end of episode 2, I already know what the fuck happens next because you and I both
me too,
read a fuck ton of the manhwa. I'm still really fucking excited to see what happens next, despite already knowing it's going to happen, because it's Solo Leveling. It has an alert. Like when I was reading it, I was just like, yeah, I know this is great. I know this is violent. I know this is like action heavy, but I just couldn't stop scrolling. I kept reading like episode after episode because that's what the manhwas are called. They're not chapters, right? And I just found myself like blowing past like 200, 300 chapters / episodes. I find myself probably doing the same thing with Solo Leveling, despite what we've said in terms of like the animation quality. Solo Leveling is the most hyped series of the season, and for good reason. It has a very compelling story. It has very strong characters. Voice acting, I think they picked the right people for it as well. Animation quality, despite some in-between stuff not being done very well, they don't cut corners when it comes to showing how much blood and violence there is in this series. You know, they definitely honor that particular aspect and do it as faithfully as possible when doing the adaptation process. Yes, it is slightly lower than its manhwa score, but at an 8.49, it is one of the strongest showings that we have in winter 2024. I think that this is only going to get better, not in terms of like the animation quality. I think that's already set in stone. It's going to be consistent throughout however many episodes they're doing. I think they're doing just one cur, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just one cur.
And I think that is also, I think it's less about, they're only doing 12 episodes as much as we will probably announce season 2 at the end of season 1, or they have to have a plan because they are not just going to take the most popular and the best ranked manhwa on at least my anime list, but probably in the whole zeitgeist of manhwas to waste. At least I hope not. But my take on Solo Leveling is I was kind of bummed out. I'll be honest. I will watch it for sure. And it's definitely not a bad show. It's not a good show. It's not a very good show. It's an extremely good show. Because everything else about it is so well done. But for me, I don't know what it is. That there's just this...
It feels like there's something missing.
Honestly, it does. And I don't know if I'm like losing my mind because there's almost nothing that I can point to directly that can be like the biggest culprit. I just somehow feel like when the sum of the parts, just I don't know what to say other than I'm not as hype as I thought I would be.
I think it just comes down to the fact that we read the manhwa and we saw how good the manhwa was. It's always going to be difficult to try and live up to that hype because yes, like we always do that whole debate of do you watch the source or read the source? Do you check out the anime? Because there's plenty of examples of where the anime is way better than the manga or the manhwa or whatever source is adapting.
Yeah, and to be fair to a lot of people, there will probably be a sizable amount of people that would check out the source, whether it is light novel, manhwa, or manga, after the anime, finishes its cur, right? But I feel. Especially actually episode 3 onwards for a bit of time, things kind of calm down a bit and then builds itself back up.
Reading the manhwa for the first time, I was like, okay, this is a 9. Straight, like no debate, this is a 9 for sure. Watching the anime, I'm at an 8.5, which is exactly where it is.
I'm also at an 8.5, but I'm leaning towards an 8, but I don't think it will be an 8 based on at least the plot progression.
Yeah. I think it's going to be heavily dependent on how like they animate like those really pivotal moments that happen throughout the season.
I just feel bad that I feel this way, and I feel that when I watch the first 2 episodes, the last shot of the first episode and the last scene of the second episode is by far the best parts of the first 2 episodes. Like when the eye moves of the first episode, I was just like, "Holy fuck!" And then the build-up of the climactic scene in the end of the second episode is done so well, but everything else I feel is just kind of.
But I feel like it comes part and parcel with the fact that we're also doing the ASAP series, right? We know how good the original was. If it wasn't good, we wouldn't have reviewed it in the first place, right? But much in the same way that, we talked about Witch and the Beast, it's because we had that really immersive, like flawless experience of reading Solo Leveling, that when we watch it getting animated, you can't help but see the cracks.
I just feel like for me it's reverse expectations of, you're telling me A1 is doing this? You're telling me Sawano is doing this? You're telling me like all this stuff that is like at least top tier A, like S class, S tier, like production stuff? Like this is going to be like Fieren level. And when it's not, at least in my mind, I feel bummed out. And do I think like it's a bad show? Far from it. In fact, the furthest from it.
You have to remember that we are really hyped about this series. It's just that rather than this being like perfect, it is instead amazing. Which, like, honestly, we might sound crazy.
I don't think it's amazing. I just think it's very good for now. But I can see it being excellent / amazing. I'm just slightly like,
you're not as like confident that it's going to be a 9 right off the bat. The fact that like right away we're like, okay, there's something wrong about this series adaptation. We can't shake it off.
Maybe they're just trying to get their footing. Maybe everything turns out the way that it's supposed to, and I'll shut the hell up. I'll eat my words, whatever you want. But right now, Solo Leveling was a show that was the first show that I should watch. And then afterwards, like, in the future, it will be a show that is the top of my rotation, but not like the top 3.
Well, speaking of top 3 then, we've now just got past the 2-hour mark. Why don't we wrap up this discussion and maybe put together, it doesn't even have to be like an actually ranked like 3rd, 2nd, 1st.
Right.
But 3 series of this current season, Winter 2024, that with absolute confidence, with no hesitation whatsoever, you would recommend to the listeners to go ahead and watch in completion.
A Sign of Affection, Delicious in Dungeon, and Sasaki and Peeps.
I agree with Sasaki and Peeps. I agree with A Sign of Affection. Ooh, this is hard because it's between, for me it's between Dungeon and Solo Leveling, because both of them are really good.
I'll be very honest. I think the more appropriate / correct choice is to say Solo Leveling in lieu of Delicious in Dungeon.
Because people are going to watch it. People will. Right?
Yeah. But I also think that Delicious in Dungeon is a show that I vibe with more, because there's the fantastical element, then there's food. It's kind of wholesome, but it's kind of wacky. But Solo Leveling is it's like, let's get edgy, let's get serious, let's get blood pumping. Everything is dark and evil, but let's fuck shit up.
Yeah. I would go with Solo Leveling just to balance out the fluffiness that comes from Sasaki and Peeps as well as
I understand, right?
Though. But again, it's like it would be crazy to not tell people to watch Solo Leveling. Despite its flaws, it is still like an amazing show to watch.
I would be compelled to say Solo Leveling. I'm just like slightly begrudging, at least currently, to say it outright compared to at least the other 3 choices I just said.
I think it's more of a travesty that Dungeon Meshi is ranked lower than it should be.
To be honest,
that's where I am.
I was saddened too when I heard about it in terms of whether it was the mouse score, and I think they premiered the first episode or maybe the first couple of episodes at some anime convention, and I looked at on Twitter, formerly, I'm just going to say Twitter, about people talking about it, including Anime News Network, and they were bummed out, and I was so angry. I was like, you guys are all wrong. There's no way. It is not the best show ever. Will and I were going to put Solo Leveling and Delicious in Dungeon top 1 pick of our season, and I guess Delicious in Dungeon fell short slightly. What about you, Will?
I'm going to stick with my 3 picks of Sign of Affection, Sasaki and Peeps, and Solo Leveling, but do not miss this opportunity to also watch Dungeon Meshi.
Delicious in Dungeon, right. I also want to be clear, and I think Will, if you don't agree with what I'm about to say, just say so. I still think, despite a lot of our criticisms or a lot of our hesitations about a lot of the series that we talked in depth about today, this is actually quite a stacked winter 2024 anime season that it's kind of crazy. I mean, I think we say that like every so often, but this time around, it is really stacked as well. And almost none of these shows, I would say, are horrendously different in a bad way. You kind of can't go wrong.
And the stuff that we mentioned in the first half, right? Series that we're not going to be going in that much depth. There's absolutely nothing wrong with those series either.
Very competent, right? Still good. Like B, A- tier.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion here so far.
Okay.
I'm just going to do a quick little count in terms of like how many 7s and above we have for winter, because I'm not doing like a score breakdown.
No, that's a good thing, because I need to grab my my podcast postscript housekeeping.
So as mentioned, we had like 6 series that are rated above an 8. Currently counting 12, 15, 18.
I mean, we'll probably
24.
go in depth on that for our 2024 retrospective.
31 series at the moment are rated at a 7 and up. I'm not counting the 6s yet, but it's
how many showings?
They have scores right now. At the moment, there are
100 and oh wait, no. Hold on. Sorry.
33, 36, 39, 42.
Pause for production.
45, 48.
Okay, while we'll
49 series right now that have a score.
Wait, 30 out of 49 is a 7.
31.
Fucking insane. Dude, that 75% usually is like 50%.
We are off to an amazing start for 2024. Anime fans, rejoice. Anime is still truly one of the greatest wonders of the world.
We also would like to thank you. What do you mean?
No, I'm just like, I like the segue. Go for it.
Yeah. I was going to do like a lame ass pun, but then I stopped like midway through, and I was just like, guys, I'm just going to read the script. I can't do this. Thanks for listening to this episode. Good Night Palette Podcast. If you want, we greatly appreciate you leaving a ratings or review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us out. I mean, this is kind of like the YouTube spiel, right? But it really does help us out. We also would like to hear your thoughts, good or bad. You can email us gapalette@gmail.com, GAPALETTE, all lowercase, all one word. We also are on a lot of social media platforms. It's all in the show description. We have a Discord server. You can come chat with us, message us whenever you want. Some of you guys do. Thank you. And if you are hesitant, don't be. We have a website. We encourage you to check it out, www.goodanimepalette.com, all lowercase, all one word. Music credits for this episode. Our intro music is Flow to It by Typa. Our break music is Laser Drops by Hip Color. And our outro music is 2011 by Rocket Jr. You can support the music artists that we feature by listening to them on Spotify, Apple Music, or your music listening platform of choice. And Epidemic Sound provides all of our royalty-free music. If you're interested, you can sign up using the referral link in our show description. Terms and conditions apply. All right.
We actually managed to do this. Okay, minus like the post discussion and also like the script reading and all that. This was a very like short seasonal review compared to the other ones, but I think it's because we were a lot more selective of what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and I think rather than giving you quick 2-minute hot takes on this show and that show, or hey, we watched a whole bunch of trash that you shouldn't check out, so you probably won't check out anyways, but we're gonna rag on them. I think Will and I find joy in that, or we like that every once in a while, but I think it is just better to sometimes condense things, streamline things, and we are doing just that. But we also want to focus on the ones that we really want to advocate for.
Otherwise, we're going to be talking about shows that really people shouldn't be bothered checking out, like this series called Isekai Onsen Paradise.
Wait, that sounds dope. What are you talking about?
It's a 5.99 right now. It's an ecchi. It's a fantasy. I mean, it's a fantasy ecchi.
Wait, but I get to go in the onsen with all these harem ladies, right?
Not just ladies. There's also an elf lady.
Boom. There you go.
I guess maybe there's one show we should have checked out. But yeah, timing is of the essence, and unfortunately, we were not in the right time to be watching it. So,
but it is time to end this episode. Thanks, guys. Check you out on the flip side, I guess. Will?
Yeah, and also get ready for the next episode. So that one's gonna be really heavy. So, yeah, catch y'all soon.
Peace.